.NET 6 and Visual Studio 2022 are just around the corner. What corner? The really close corner. And there are some interesting changes to the Asp.NET core templates in it. Let's mash on that. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Asp.NET Monsters. In today's episode, we're going to take a little peek at the new weird-looking templates that you're going to find in Visual Studio 2022, and I guess on the command line too if you're starting a new project on .NET 6 for Asp.NET.
Yeah, things look a little different, don't they?
Yeah. I have moved my cheese a significant distance on this release. This is more than the average cheese moving, I think. So I have created a new project here inside of a brand new, freshly installed Visual Studio 2022. And at least on the surface, like if we don't open up any of these files, it looks kind of similar to what we used to have before. There is a startup missing, I think, here, but there is a program.cs, but nothing else. So if we open up this program.cs, we get something that is, I don't know, but it's not C#. It's not my C#, at least.
Yeah, it's way too far off to the left on the screen right off the bat.
Yeah.
Something's not right here.
Like, let me just do a count here. Like, there's only like one curly brace in this entire thing.
Madness.
Yeah, it's very odd. So let's take a look at some of the stuff that's happening here. So the first thing to notice is that there is no entry point inside of this. I'm used to seeing some sort of like a static main method, and that dates back all the way to when we stole a bunch of stuff from Java at the start of C#. We had that same sort of static entry point into the application, and that has disappeared now. So this is gone. It's actually using a C#9 feature here, which is top-level statements. So basically, we just have this file inside of our application here, and this is, by convention, where you come into the application. So we no longer need to have that same sort of like static entry point into the application. This is just going to be run nicely by the system as it starts up. So the next thing that I notice is missing is that there's usually a bunch of using statements up here, right? And those seem to have disappeared. So this is using another new feature here. Well, actually, maybe a combination of new features here. So what it's doing is we have a new concept inside of C#10 called global usings. And the idea is that if you open up a normal C# project, there's a certain subset of namespaces you almost always see in every single file. So everything has system in it. The vast majority of the code I write has like system.link in it. Quite a few bits of code have like system collections generic in it. And then there's maybe like a couple of others that you're going to see across almost your entire project. So this is being changed around a little bit now. So you can extract those common things and just remove that craft from the top of all of your files and push it into a global using. But if we take a look over here and we poke through all the files over here, we can see that there's only one CS file in the entire project. So where are these global usings defined in this project? And that, as it turns out, can be found by taking a look at this project file here. So there is this additional setting here now that has been added to the project file called Implicit Usings. So this Implicit Usings here kind of figures out a basic set of namespaces that you would want to have inside of your project and writes them out into a secret file. So I went poking around, and there's a blog post on where to find this file from Scott Hanselman that is nothing but lies. So
based on a previous release candidate.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that it was just outdated, but I choose to believe that Scott is purposefully misleading us on this here. So We don't find
Down at the bottom.
Thank you, File Explorer here. So this is a project in File Explorer, and inside of the object directory here, there are a handful of .cs files in here. Let's see if we can sort them by that. 3, 4 of these files generated here. And one of the files that's generated here is this global usings .g.cs. So if we open that up over here, we can see that this is a set of global usings that have been defined throughout the application for us to use. So that means that we have access to like all of these namespaces throughout any file inside of the application. And this is super nice to have this here.
Mm-hmm. So is that, if you go back to your CS proj file,
yes.
So you add the implicit usings enabled. It must be dependent on what SDK that you had selected then, what it's going to generate for those. I would assume.
have no idea how it figures out.
So there's a bunch of web related ones in there.
Yeah,
I wonder if
it must be based on this SDK. I think it's just really the only hint that I could possibly have about what I would be including. I mean, we could.
Interesting.
I don't know what would happen if we removed it.
I don't think it's going to compile.
Oh, so it wants to reload. Impressive.
Load failed. I think you need some kind of target.
Let's go back to editing the project file. Oh, did I copy it? I hope I copied it. I didn't. Shoot, what was it?
SDK equals.
Equals Microsoft something.web.
I've completely sidetracked you now.
Yeah, now I've broken everything here. I don't think it was Microsoft.web. I think there was something else in there too.
Googling. Microsoft.net.sdk.web. And
All capitals?
No, lowercase for the DK.
Yeah, so
build failed because now it doesn't know.
There's a bunch of problems down here. Let's see what it changed that to. Okay, so it's pulled out a bunch of all the web stuff here. So yeah, it must use that to figure out what to use.
All right. Sorry for the detour.
No.
I was curious.
This is how we learn new stuff. Okay, yeah, so it's gone back and put in all of the other namespaces here. So that is pretty nifty. Let's get that program.cs file back up again here and see what else we have here. So everything else seems like it is stuff that we are familiar with. So adding razor pages to the application is something that we are familiar with. So over here, we've got the same razor page style that we would have had before. Nothing over here looks particularly different.
Just fewer usings, I guess.
Yeah, I'm interested that they decided to leave some of these usings in here instead of making them global too. That would be an interesting discussion to have. I bet you there were great debates over which namespaces to include, which ones not to include. But I think it makes sense to not include MVC because you can definitely build projects without using MVC. So web app builder, so this has been cleaned up significantly over the years. It used to be like way back in the beginning of this ASP.NET Core adventure. These app builders were huge. Like we brought in all sorts of different stuff and they were very complicated to configure. But over the years, it's kind of narrowed down to a much smaller set of stuff and these built out kind of sensible configurations for you. For the development environment, we're going to throw an exception handler in there and use HSTS. Looks like we're doing HTTPS redirection, so that's really nice to pass everything over to an HTTPS context. Uses static files off disk that allows us to use all of the stuff from the www root, and then the routing is added in. We have some authorization in here, but it's not greatly configured, so there's probably not a whole lot there. And then the razor pages, and then just running the application. We kick this off. broken anything too much, so that's come up pretty nicely here. And then that kind of just works the way it's supposed to. I guess the takeaways here are a combination of a bunch of existing technologies or technologies that came as part of C#10 and changes to the project system to allow you to create these very lightweight applications here. And the reason behind this, I think, is to make this more approachable for people coming into new projects, coming into the .NET and the C# ecosystem from, I don't know, Python or Ruby or something like that, where there's a lot less of this ceremony that we have had for years around all of this. So a lot of that ceremony still exists, but it's kind of extracted away behind the scenes in a place that theoretically you'll never have to go and see. But I don't know how successful that will be. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, the way that I heard it explained that made the most sense to me was like, you're sitting down to teach somebody about building a web application with C# and you have them create a new project and you go look at the program CS file and you tell them, okay, skip down to line 13. This is where things start. And just ignore those other 12 lines. We'll come back to those later and kind of explain what's happening there. Whereas now it's just, line 1 is where things get started, and you don't have to get distracted by all those other pieces. You can kind of get right down to this is how you create a web application in C#.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Remember to like, comment, and share, and we'll see everybody on next week's episode.
Bye.
Bye.